welcome back to Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. This is, I don't know, our 13th, 14th, 20th.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean,
one of those numbers.
The thing is that you guys just saw the 7th. You know, we're working on the 12th or 13th because we're trying to stay ahead. You know, as many of you know, I just got back from Ireland. So there was a 6-week period where Will and I didn't drink any wine together.
Right.
So,
but we had done a couple of filming episodes where we did two back to back. Yeah.
And it tended, the longer ones tended to be the second ones.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says.
Yeah.
But, you know. So today we are going to do one of my favorite vineyards wines.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting with Mollydooker's, and we're starting not at the top, but pretty close to their top.
This is like top 3, right?
Yeah, this is their Carnival of Love. So let me give you some information about them, and then we'll talk about more general stuff. And it's time for me to do this because, as we said, we're trying to keep them under 30 minutes or at 30 minutes for a little while till we find out what you people think of that. So this is Carnival of Love. It's a Shiraz. It's a 2018. Now, I'm not sure which of them they sometimes put Viognier in, but they don't put them in every year. So
right.
I really want to ask them, you know.
Is it the Enchanted Path that does the Viognier?
I think it's also this one. But the thing is, sometimes they're not in, even the one that does.
Right.
So I want to know, is it, what is the reasoning? Why is that? I mean, they're wonderful either way.
Right.
This gets 4.4 stars out of 5 at Vivino with 547 rating. Its average price is $84.99, and it's Twice Made Wine Spectator's top 10 wines in the world.
Oh, wow.
So these guys are located in the McLaren Vale. They have 160 acres. I don't know the breakdown. Couldn't find it anywhere on what they plant in those 116 acres.
Right.
Now,
a lot of Shiraz.
Now, this is some of the most extracted, jammy wines I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
And I remember I emailed them about that. I tweeted something, and they tweeted back at me, so I asked them. Yeah. And then I got into it, and that was years ago. Before
that was back in like 2013, 2014, right?
And so they told me about their watering program. So they do a lot of water before the grapes appear. And when the grapes appear, then they back off on the water so that the grape vines start pulling all of its energy and pushing it into the grape rather than the canopy.
Yep.
And then once the grapes reach a certain point, then they start watering again, and then they're off and on and off and on to do, you know, essentially stress that to grape to a point where you get it really extracted and you come up with this. Let's see. It is run by Sarah Marquise. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Sarah. Founded in 2005. She started as a winemaker at Fox Creek, which her parents were partners in. So it seems like she's a second-generation winemaker. You know, anybody who wants to say that women in wine don't mix doesn't know what they're talking about. There's simply no one better out there than Mollydooker, in my estimation. This is you just don't get a bad bottle of wine from Mollydooker. Ever.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was on Naked Wines, I would estimate that at least half of the winemakers on Naked Wines were women. And now I could be wrong; it could have been fewer than that. But it seemed like it was as close to gender parity as you're likely to find. And I just thought that was really interesting because.
Oh my God, man! Smell that! I'm sorry to interrupt you. Oh my God.
You know what I thought of immediately?
Big and
I hope this doesn't bother or offend you, but the first thing I thought of was humus. Like, have you ever smelled forest floor after a rainfall?
Yeah. It's not quite. Oh.
But that was just first without swirling it.
Now, I'm not getting that forest floor on it. I know what you're talking about. I mean, and if it's the right. If it's a funky forest floor, you don't want it. But if it's more of a neutral.
Yeah, more just like when you walk through like a pine forest after a good hard rain.
Well, definitely leaves. There are definitely some leaves in
Everything's just been awoken. Yeah.
But there's chocolate.
There's a ton of
there's eucalyptus. There's mint, which you usually only get when you get to the middle range.
You know what's really funny about this is that I'm smelling fruit, but I'm not being punched in the nose with blackberry, which is what I was honestly expecting.
Well, there's blackberry. There's
boysenberry. But they're not hitting you in the face.
Right.
With
No,
it.
I'm talking about the sipping now. I've had that first sip, and it's a big mouthfeel. It's really good. It's funny. I was going to do a blog.
That's actually a lot more balanced than I don't want to say than I remembered. I think that
the last couple of years I've noticed that they're, as I said in one review, it's not as jammy and as fruit forward as previous vineyards, but in a good way.
Right.
Vintages, rather.
Oh yeah, no, that's when I say that, that's a comparison to other wines.
Before, I mean, this is big and bold and knock your socks off, but it's also, I think, more subtle than it was just a few years ago.
It's also worth noting this wine is 16% alcohol by volume.
Oh yeah.
So some of what Warren and I are saying saying is not just based on viewing this wine in a vacuum. We're thinking about A, past vintages that we've had, B, the current ABV. This does not hit you.
And I've had every vintage
like
since like 2007.
No, I mean, the thing is that it's impressive
Maybe
for the amount of
5.
extraction they get, the amount of alcohol that's in this. You would expect this to be a lot more in your face than it is. It is in your face, but not in an unpleasant or
It's a perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Now, that being said, if you're introducing to someone the red wine, or you're new to red wine, maybe don't start here.
Yeah, it's funny.
Work your way up.
I was just getting ready to write a blog on the McLaren Vale. And I was going to say my favorite place for Syrah. And I was going through all the different vineyards, and I'm like, oh my God, the McLaren Vale doesn't do anything for me. It's Mollydooker.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at these others, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, Penfolds is all right, but it doesn't do a lot for me. And I'm looking at, like, Amon Ra, I think, you know, for $100, I could do a whole, like, the Boxer blows its boxing shorts off. I mean, it's not close.
We also have to consider here, folks, that Warren got his sights set very, very high early on by Mollydooker and by Paso Robles.
Yeah.
Which is why it's been really interesting. His Australian tastes haven't really shifted, but his tastes in California have crept all the way up to Washington.
Yep. No, that's true. I mean, I now am into much softer wines than I used to be, more acidic.
I would say you're into more. What I've just seen is that, like, if you were to take a graph of just the temperature of the climates of the regions that you have liked over the years, what you are going to see is that you are going slowly cooler climate.
Yeah.
You're going from Paso Robles.
But this is an exception.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, I would still be happy to just drink wines from Mollydooker if I wasn't so interested in trying
if I had to hazard
so
a
many
guess,
different wines.
I would say that by and large, I mean, if you're in the McLaren Vale or if you're in Barossa, and I'm not saying that Australian wines don't have variants, they do, but if you're talking about the variants in California and Washington's wines versus the variants in McLaren Vale, Barossa wines, I think you're going to find the variance is less. Yeah. You know, the spread doesn't cover as much ground.
Except that these guys don't taste like it. Nobody else tastes like them.
That's my point.
Vale
so I don't
taste anything like them.
I think if Australian winemakers had more of a variance, you might have found other winemakers you liked, not as much, but close to as much. But in California and Washington, you're finding stuff that you were looking for that was just different from what you'd had before.
There's so much spice on the back end. I love the spice that comes with a Syrah, which is why, like, that last wine that we did, the wine we did a couple of wines ago, which they said we were reading everywhere, it was an Australian Syrah.
Oh, the Southern Belle,
done in Spain in Emilia in bourbon barrels, and I'm just like, that's not Syrah.
Nope.
Now I've also found since then I found a place that said that it was 50% Cab and 50% Merlot, and I'm just like, no, it wasn't.
What I think it is I think that it had kind of a mild case of rubus, where it was probably different regions bought the label, or different producers bought the label from different regions, and so I don't. Does rubus go outside of California?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I'm not paying any attention to them anymore. They had one great wine, and I've been disappointed by every rubus since
that was.
then.
I mean,
Sorry,
it was made in Jumilla. I think they do other grapes in Jumilla, but I have never heard of a Shiraz being grown in Jumilla. I am 95% positive that was a Monastrell because it drank like
this is a Shiraz.
This is definitely a Shiraz. Absolutely.
This is like the mother of all Shiraz.
And it's worth comparing. We talked about the Southern Belle, and we had a long discussion about Mourvedre, Monastrell, and Shiraz, and why I thought it was a Monastrell as opposed to a Shiraz. This has a lot more of that varietally correct Shiraz.
Shiraz, yes, character.
And the Monastrell...
This is varietally correct. It's over the top. It's big. It's a big fruit bomb. It's jammy. I mean, it's everything I look for in a wine.
But the Mourvedre, the Monastrell that we had, there was a Monastrell by any other name, had something else in it. And it's hard to describe. It's one of those things that if you put them side by side, you'd see what I was talking about. It's not that Shiraz isn't jammy, but Mourvedre is jammy in a different way, and there's a funkiness to it that Shiraz can have, but it's just inherent in Monastrell. You find it every time you have one. And with Shiraz, it's kind of like, you can inculcate it, and some of these have it, especially in the Rhone. But Australian Shiraz is, by and large, it's going to have a slight jam jar, not slight. It's going to have a jam jar character. Australians love encouraging that in their Shiraz. It's what they were known for back in the 90s when they first started really getting into the American market. And if you find a gimmick that works for you, you're going to run with it.
These guys were founded in 2005, but I'm telling you, I think it's, reading their website. We didn't do the Mollydooker shake.
Right. We didn't have to. We decanted it.
We decanted it for an hour and a half. Now, the thing is, I'm not really sure about the science on the Mollydooker shake, but it absolutely works. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
It aerates it.
In that,
it aerates the heck out of it.
Even if it didn't, it would still improve the quality of the wine. Because, the thing that we mentioned, Tyson.
Yeah.
The physicist.
Oh, yeah.
He was saying how they put wine in a blender.
Yeah.
And then served it to wine snobs, and it was better than the stuff they didn't put in the blender. They tried it with oxygen, they tried it with nitrogen, they tried it with argon, they did all kinds of inert gases, and it didn't matter what they did it with.
If you think about it, in a blender, unless you're doing the blender in a vacuum, I mean...
Right,
the blender,
which they were capable of, because we're talking, it's Tyson.
But the thing is that it has to be micro-oxygenation.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, if he wanted to do it on the freaking moon, could probably pull it off.
Absolutely. But think about it this way. That blender, there is some level of oxygen in that blender. And now it's not as noticeable if this bottle are full of wine and there is a headspace like that and you're shaking it.
They recommend 3 shakes.
Yeah.
Which, and a lot of people will say, you can't do that to a wine. You absolutely
can.
And
you bought it, you can do whatever you want with it.
Absolutely improve the flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyone who doesn't believe in the Mollydooker shake, I mean, we can argue about the nitrogen maybe, but it works.
Also, if you pour this bottle into a decanter, you're shaking it. It's not. It doesn't.
In fact,
it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing than doing that.
Because this is so tall, I make sure I pour it in rough because I want a little more extra. I want a little more extra oxygen.
Now, what I think is happening when Tyson ran his wine through a blender, it's not as obvious as decanting or as shaking it, but there's oxygen in that headspace.
Maybe we can get him on the show to tell us what he did.
Sure,
that would be pretty cool.
But I mean, honestly, I think that you would find that what would happen is that if you were able to analyze the headspace in the blender, that oxygen is being pulled in. It's not being pulled in as dramatically as it would be with decanting or with shaking it.
I'm just thinking though, if they did it with nitrogen and they did, I mean, these are scientists.
Yeah,
I think they would have.
Nitrogen would do nothing.
And yet they said that even with the inert gases it did. And I can only believe that if this guy tells me he's doing it with inert gases, he's making a way for the oxygen not to be there.
Okay.
I mean, that's my guess because he's a world-class physicist.
It boggles my mind because literally the only thing that results in wine having aroma and flavor is the oxygenation of volatile flavor aroma compounds. I don't know what to say. I don't either.
You said that, wine...
There could be another mechanism.
Wine connoisseurs loved it until they found it out. And then they, like those poor dudes who were talking about the wonderful wine they'd had when they spent $3,000 on a bottle of Chateau... Rothschild.
Yeah.
And they were served a $9 Pinot because the people in the table next to them were on their first wedding anniversary and they were broke and they'd saved up to go to an expensive restaurant and they were pretending to be drinking an expensive. They were drinking a $3,000 Chateau Rothschild. And the people on the next table were telling the waiter how wonderful it was and the clarity of the wine was shocking. And they were like drinking Apothic Red. And
the placebo effect. It's still the most powerful effect in the universe.
30% of all people are placebo responders.
Yeah.
So, they probably really felt they were dead until they found out.
Right.
And then they were like, oh, wasn't that good? And I try to live with what, it's, and I said this a lot in the early days when we started doing this. I love doing blind tastings because then I got to live with what I wrote. I write my notes. I got to live with it. I've done verticals with these guys, and that's something I'd like to do again. And the Boxer routinely comes up for me as my favorite. Maybe that means that I don't appreciate the best stuff, although I love them. But I just really love the Boxer. And
I would love to know how.
And here I am extolling the virtues of the Boxer while we're drinking.
Well, you can't help yourself when we bring up Mollydooker. You're going to bring up the Boxer. That's just going to happen.
And it has been called. Robert Parker called it the best QPR, quality per price of wine in the world, and I agree with him completely. This is a great wine.
Yes,
and it is probably slightly
it's QPR through the roof,
right?
Well, in the basement, depending on how you're looking at it.
An $89 bottle of wine that tastes like this. This is a really
that's only $89.
Yeah, it's only $89.
What's the one that's $210?
Oh, that's the
Velvet
Glove. That's the Velvet Glove.
Oh,
no, the Enchanted Path's about the same price.
Okay,
it's.
Huh. Oh, you know what it was? I bet that some part of my brain is remembering what the restaurant price for Carnival of Love was.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, that would be.
That's what I'm thinking of.
We bought these retail.
Yeah.
But
and you also bought them retail at Vintage Cellar, and their markup is only 33%. They mark things up 17% under the standard retail markup.
Yeah.
Which is worth noting if you're in the New River Valley area. Vintage Cellars markup is the lowest you will ever find.
Right, but sometimes you'll still find the wine for less at a place that can order more cases because you pay less as you get more cases.
But you're not going to find one of those in the New River Valley.
No, you're not. You're absolutely not. You got to go to like Yanni's. In Virginia Beach.
Yep. You got to go to a big city.
I purchased a lot of wine from them. They ship it right here. It always arrives well. Never had one break. Everyone's been
the nice
good.
thing about Vintage Cellar that they have going for them is that they have a long-term established relationship with all of their distributors.
Yeah.
And so...
Oh, they can get stuff nobody else can.
Yeah, and the thing is you might pay a little more than you would in another city, but unless you're willing to drive to Virginia Beach or Richmond or DC...
And there goes your savings.
Exactly.
Oh, I saved $2 a bottle, and I, did $100 worth of gas to do it. Woo-hoo. Good thing I bought 5 cases.
Well, the thing is, what I tell people is, if you go to a big city, you should really check out the wine stores and just, pick up a few bottles you might not... that way it's worth your while. Yep. You're not going out of your way to do it, and you're also bringing back something you might not be able to otherwise
And this one just evolves and evolves and evolves. It's beautiful.
It's a very warm wine.
Yeah, that's a good. You definitely get a warm feeling in your mouth, and that part of that's the alcohol, but it's not hot. For 16%, this does not finish hot.
No, I mean honestly, I would have guessed like 14 if I were, and also I would never have guessed this was Mollydooker.
Really?
Yeah, because
it's like Mollydooker to me.
Well, a part of it may have to do with the fact that
But I've had cases and cases and cases of Mollydooker.
And I think that just like you, my own palate has evolved. Back when you and I were first drinking together, that might have been like one of the first carnivals of love that I've ever had.
Yeah.
And so it probably hit me a different. And now that I kind of know what I'm in for, it's kind of like, oh, this isn't as intense as I remember.
I've probably only had the Velvet Glove 6 or 7 times. I don't think I've had a full case of that, but I've had cases of everything else.
Yeah.
Every year I buy a couple of everything.
It also has literally been... I'm trying to remember the last time I've had a Mollydooker wine. You left America in 2020.
Yep.
And I think the last time that I had a Mollydooker wine was either... Did you bring any Mollydooker wines to the Super Bowl party in 2020?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I think that would have been the last...
This, and we actually did a vertical. We had everyone from the Boxer to the, we had the Boxer, we had all their Shiraz. We had the Boxer, we had the Enchanted Path, we had Carnival of Soul, and we had the Velvet Glove. We had them all. We did a vertical at a Super Bowl.
That's amazing.
That was fun. My teams weren't playing.
That must be why I have such dim memories of that night.
Oh, dude, I've thrown a Super Bowl party, and everybody comes to my Super Bowl party, and I don't remember the last 4 or 5 Super Bowls. Now it's not because I got wasted and I don't remember it. It's because it was my party, and everybody wanted to talk to me, and they wanted to know about the wines, and they weren't my teams. So that's what I did. I talked wine.
The sad thing is that if Warren's team ever does play a Super Bowl, he won't have a Super Bowl party that year because he will not want us distracting.
It'll be like me and Logan and 2 other Cowboys fans.
Right, exactly.
So we can sit
the
there
rest of us will not be
watch
invited.
The game. No, everybody else will not be invited because I'm not interested in being distracted. It would be horrible. How many people showed up on my last Super Bowl party?
At least 40.
It was twice what we expected. It was more than that.
Was it? Okay.
I got the bill for it. But at any rate, it would be terrible. Like, dude, my team's going to shut up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it would be. Oh, so what do you want to... I'm not talking about the wine. Go away.
Right.
It would be horrible. I can't do that to my friends.
No. In order for Warren to have a
But I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, so it's not happening.
The only way it could happen is if Warren had like a soundproof box where he could and he could get one without having to interact with any of the rest of us.
Can't hear you.
Yep. Sorry. Go away.
Can't hear over the awesome of this football game.
But, I mean, that's the thing, is that I don't have an eidetic memory. If I did, I might be able to go, oh, yeah, this is kind of like what I remember having. It's just my tastes are different.
Yeah, I mean, I remember these because I've had so many of them. There are many other wines I've had. I'll pull them up, and I'm like, I do not remember this wine.
It has been at least 2.5 years since I've had this, and it could have been longer.
It's been more than a year since I've had it because I've been trying to age it. I've been holding on to it.
Right.
And... I was doing my faves, and this is one of only 2 vintage. The other was Ridge, which I also really like.
Yeah.
But this is the only one. This is one of only 2 that hit all 3 of my favorite 15.
Right.
Blogs. Hope you've read all of them. They're all up by now. Right now, as we speak, only the first 2 are, but the third will be long before this one is.
Right.
And they're the only one that got 2 on one of them because they got both the Enchanted Path and the Carnival of Love
right.
in 50 to 100.
Right.
You know, and they only have one over 100, which is the Velvet Glove, so they couldn't do more than one.
I had forgotten that this was under 100 retail. That it completely.
Yeah,
I keep thinking of this as like a $200 bottle of wine.
Now, unfortunately, I'm not as big a fan of Cabernet grown in Australia.
Right.
And there's just, you know, there's nothing that can be done about it.
Right.
Because it doesn't give me... And if it was like, if somebody said it was some other kind of grape, I'd like it fine.
Yeah.
But because of my love for Napa cabs and for Walla Walla, Washington cabs, I found like 3 of them recently. The Feather is from Walla Walla, Washington, by the way.
Yeah,
and you know who does it? Okay, we're really getting off here. Sorry for those of you who just want to focus on that. The guy who owns, what was the big Napa we just did? Hobb? No.
Not Paul Hobbs.
No, not Paul Hobbs. That would be great. No, Dunn.
Oh,
Randy Dunn is the guy who makes the wine for the Feather up in Walla Walla, Washington,
really?
Where he owns the big vineyard in
That's fantastic.
Napa in Howell Mountain. Like he's got nothing better to do than make other people's wines.
Well,
and he makes great wines of his own.
I'm sure that he's well remunerated for his
no
skills.
Doubt, no doubt, because the Feather is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, for my money, it's better than anything he does out of Napa. But you know, getting back to this though. Sometime in the last couple of years, these have just gotten more subtle and better, a bit more approachable, but they didn't lose the thing that made me love them.
Honestly, and it's I'm really glad that you brought that up because I don't.
The word approachable in this wine is probably.
I don't think it's just that our tastes have changed, although I'm sure that our tastes have shifted. They shouldn't remain static. But I think that you're right, and I think that back when you were first getting into wine, when you and I were first drinking together, and we were having those Paso Robles Reds. And they were just, you know, hit you right in the face, knock you right out of your chair, just bam, 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 Petite Syrah Zins and stuff. Yeah. I think that we were in a different time period.
Yeah.
And we are entering...
All I wanted was jammy and fruit forward, and I didn't care about anything else.
I think
but now I want the whole experience.
Yeah, and I think that the wine drinking population and the winemakers are shifting along with it. Like, we are experiencing, like, a total shift. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in... 10
I'd love
years.
to get my hands on some of the stuff from 2006, 2000, you know, the stuff that I first started drinking. I would love to get my hands on that.
The thing is, though, it's going to be different now than when it started, because that's 16 years ago. Yeah.
In the, you know, yeah.
It'll be a good experiment for the screw cap thing.
It's so hard, right, and as we've talked about, a lot of people don't approve of the screw caps. We brought this up.
You got to get over that, people.
Right, because you know they did the big study, which was done with plastic corks and with corks made of cork, and the blind was a screw cap. And when they tested the wine, they tested to see the cork beat the plastic, and then they did it against the blind, and the blind beat both of them. So this is absolutely the way to go.
Absolutely.
I would buy $1,000 bottle of wine with a twist off cap as long as I trust the producer.
Here's the thing about screw caps is that they're not complete oxygen barriers. We've talked about this in other videos. There's a wadding. I was looking at it.
The wadding is.
It's not very thick.
It's not terribly thick. No.
And the reason is this. My guess is they want this sucker to age as much as is possible in this kind of closure.
And let's be honest. Who lets their Mollydooker age? It's so good out of the bottle, and it's so hard. I've held onto this thing for a couple of years, you know, and I did drink a bunch of Mollydooker before I left for Europe because I didn't think I was coming back, and I wasn't going to leave my...
Right.
Boy, was that a good cellar, too. I was not going to leave that cellar here to get old and then have to, like, figure out how to sell it because you're not shipping it to Europe.
Well, I showed my dad. I was like, this is how you. I said, you and I both have good memories, but they're not perfect. And here's what you do: you can trick yourself. If you have any kind of cellar, whatever your cellar might be. My dad's cellar is under a desk, and so there are 6 bottles that are close to you and 6 bottles that are far away from you. And I said, what you want to do is, if there's a wine that you would really like to drink, put it 2 or 3 bottles up at the very back. It'll be the last one you look for. The ones you look at are going to be close to the top and they're going to be close to the front. That's when you peek in, it's natural human nature.
I should probably have 200 wines, but I've only got. I think I'm down.
You've only been back for a little while. It's fine.
I think I'm down to 7. Well, it's not. That's not the issue. The issue is we have another major we have another major election coming up.
Well, yeah, but that.
And I'm seriously thinking of moving to Malta. To get the visa, you only need to be able to prove you can make $2,000.
Wait until after the election to make any decisions.
Absolutely, but I don't want a huge cellar of wine that I can't bring with me to Malta.
Good point.
And so, I've got 70 bottles in there, and I was like looking at this going, well, I want to really wait. But I tell you, part of what did this, and I suppose to some extent we're compromising our values or whatever, is that we sent off I sent off my favorite 15 under 50 to all the vineyards, let them know they were in it.
That's not compromising our values.
A couple of them got back to me, but only one of them was really like, wow, and that was Mollydooker.
Yeah.
And the thing about Mollydooker is they've always been really responsive.
Yeah, they have a very active social media presence.
I just did a tweet reviewing one of their wines, and they're like, hey, thanks, and they followed me and never unfollowed me on Twitter. And I'm not very active on Twitter, though I'm trying to get more active because of this.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple of emails back and forth, and they're just really friendly, nice people who care about the people who drink their wines in a way that a lot of other vineyards just are not.
Let's also highlight here the difference between one of the big differences between New World wineries and Old World wineries. If you're in the Old World, if you're in France or Germany or Spain or Italy, you could be the nicest people on the planet running a winery. And social media just maybe doesn't matter that much.
Although I will say the Chateau Picard immediately reached out and said, "This is wonderful. We really appreciate it."
But you got to figure what kind of social media
presence. It was such a professional package, and I'm like, "No, it wasn't," because it was like our second or third one, and we were not dialed in yet. But we weren't horrible. We had the thing we did too, and we expected to just trash them and then redo them. But there really wasn't. We just a little bit of editing, and we didn't need to because we've been talking wine together forever. So that
we're both performers,
right? But they're going to send us their Grand Cru. Like, would you review our Grand Cru? And I'm like, holy hell, we would,
absolutely.
Now, of course, the one thing we'll have to do, like I just said, I've been in contact with Mollydooker, and we've emailed back and forth, and that's it. But that did get me to go, you know what? I'm not going to wait a couple of years. They're so nice. Let's go ahead and this was one we had.
Absolutely.
I wanted to get a little older.
Well, plus you love them so much.
Then you guys who are watching this review can get this still.
Yep.
If I wait another year or two, you won't be able to.
Yeah. Well, and the what I want to point out is that, like, if you're an Italian family living in or a French family living in a state that your family has owned for hundreds of years,
right,
you might have a social media presence, but it's not that important to you because you're not really worried about what people think. You're gonna make your wine, you're gonna sell it, and it's just kind of like, oh, cool. And when you see the tweet, you're like, oh, cool, these American people like our wines.
John Joseph Prum's, their website has 4 pages, and all they give you on it is what they do with the information of your DNS while you're on the page, their email address and their phone number.
Right.
That's it. That's all that's there.
Well,
and it's hilarious that you have to read to get that. You have to read through pages of legalese that tells you that they only keep your DNS for as long as you're on the website, and then they get rid of it. And here's our phone number if you want to get in touch with us, or our email
Think about
address.
It this way.
They did not respond to us letting them know that we reviewed them.
Americans, Australians, New Zealanders,
We're
South
all
Africans.
New Worlders, yeah.
Well, but the thing is that we have a lot more to prove because our wineries, by and large, are pretty new. And so the thing is
these guys don't have anything to prove.
But what I'm saying is they have 20 years worth of existence up against however many hundred, like, compare the two.
Right. The John Joseph
centuries
Brum,
and centuries and
people,
centuries.
That was a 300-year-old vineyard, I think.
And if you've been around for 300 years and been making wine, you must be doing something right.
Right.
If you've been around for 20 years, I'm not saying that you have something to prove in terms of the quality of your wine, but you need to be more vocal in order for people to hear you. And part of being vocal is having an active, in 2022, is having an active relationship with people who like your wines and letting them know, hey, we appreciate your business. We're really glad that you're doing this stuff.
I wonder, Sarah Marquis actually is the person I was with, and that's the CEO.
Probably so.
And I'm just like,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Sarah, how do you have time? Because I know I can't be the only person you're talking to. I'm just like, wow, I'm so impressed. I mean, I'm a CEO of a company.
Maybe she has she has one day out of her week where she focuses on Twitter.
Maybe so. I know that.
Maybe she's like, I'm not taking any calls from 8 to 12.
Because I personally, back when my company no longer has the kind of media presence that my last one had, because I don't want it. I don't want to be on the front page of the Washington Post ever again.
Right.
For 6 months, I couldn't freaking go anywhere without people recognizing me.
But democracy dies in darkness.
And then when I was working with KISS, it was even dumber. It was even, yes, oh my God, you're the guy who works with Kiss. And this is happening to me as I'm coming out of recovery, right? You know, I've just had an operation. I had my turbinates trimmed in my nose. And I wake up and there's a dude right there with long hair who's a Kiss fan. He's like, oh, you work with Kiss.
In the hospital?
In the hospital. And I shoved him away and I'm like, dude,
yeah.
I think I just came out of surgery because I can barely think at all.
How'd they let him in?
He was an orderly. He worked there. But Kiss fans are everywhere. So, you know, with the book company, I'm not. And here I am doing these videos because I don't want people to know who I am. Right?
Well, luckily they can't find you.
Well, this is true. Well, no, never mind. I'm not going there.
Right.
But at any rate,
you're a lot more difficult to find.
No, I'm actually easier to find than I was when I was working with Kiss.
Really?
What the time that 4 dudes showed up on my porch at 4 a.m. to high five me and tell me I was cool, that was it.
How did they find you?
They just Googled me and it popped up, and then we put everything in Angela's name, and then they couldn't find me anymore.
All right, when we turn the camera off, I want to know more about this. But that seems baffling to me.
We're gonna keep going.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, just to let you know, as this is like the Pirates Code, more of a guideline.
Right. It's more of a guideline than an.
But if we're doing a Mollydooker wine, y'all need to know.
You guys get extra time.
If you know nothing about Mollydooker,
earned it.
Take one thing away from this. This is one, as much as he loves Doubleback, as much as that wine, in terms of its overall quality, has earned a place in his pantheon. This is basically the Zeus of his Greek god Olympus.
It is the wine that really, really made me love big red wines.
Which is part of the reason I think he loves them so much. Is not just that the quality is good, which it is, but also,
boy, is it.
He feels that he owes them a great debt because without them, he's not sure he would have ever loved big red wines this much.
Oh, I mean, I liked The Prisoner back when it was good.
What's Oren Swift been up to these days? Is there anything new on his horizons?
You know, I don't know. I mean, the last few ones.
I feel like he's gotten kind of gimmicky.
Yeah, I was going to say, the last few I've had, I'm like, oh, you're just trying to be bigger than the last one.
At a certain point, you have to stop going.
And then, are we talking about Oren Swift or are we talking about Dave Finney? Because those are two different things.
Yes.
Right. And it can be so hard to tell the two of them apart because they're trying to do the same damn thing.
Right. But, well, they teamed up together for a hot minute, right?
I don't know.
I feel like there was a Grenache that came out of southern France, and I feel like it was an Oren Swift Dave Finney collaboration.
Was that the 622?
Shatter, I believe is what
Shatter.
It was called.
No, Shatter's their Pinot.
No, Shatter's a. Oh, I think. Oh, you're right.
I've had it. It's the only Pinot I don't.
No, it's a Grenache. Maybe they've changed the varietal.
We'll have to look.
They probably changed the varietal.
They could. They may have one of each.
You also have to remember this is 3 years out of date.
Or they could be calling both Shatter. I mean,
it could be a new label.
Here's the Pinot. Here's the. I mean, because there are wines that the Prisoner puts their name on everything.
When I worked at Wine Lab, we had the Shatter Grenache in, and it was a Côte de Roussillon. And it was a Dave Finney. It might not have actually been a collaboration with Oren Swift, but it was definitely a Dave Finney wine. And you could tell because bam, right in the nose.
Yeah, I mean, I do like I do like Grenache, but I prefer it to be from Spain.
Right.
Yeah.
The Shatter was pretty good. I remember thinking it was pretty good.
None of his wines are bad.
Right.
None of them. I mean, he doesn't know how to make a bad wine.
Right.
He's not Michael David, who makes lots of great wines and some shitty ones.
Right, right.
Whoops, did not mean to swear. He's not Michael David, who makes lots of great wines and some not so great wines.
Right.
How's that?
for our PG-13 audience out there.
Yeah.
For all of the teenagers out there watching our wine reviews.
Oh man, yeah. Well, and let's be honest, we did the Saturn earlier today.
Yeah.
That's one glass each, not much alcohol, so I can't blame it on the alcohol. Although this one's 16%.
It is 16%.
But I what can I say? I gush over Mollydooker. I'm like a fanboy. This was my first love. It's like, when the first time I talked to Paul Stanley at Kiss when I was working with him, and he called me, it's just like, he's like, well, what's the issue, dude? I mean, you're as big a pro as we are. I mean, we wouldn't be doing business with you otherwise. And I'm like, well, and that I was never your hero.
Well, but that also must have made you feel even more like.
Oh, but I was fully aware he was doing that on purpose.
Right.
Gene Simmons, Gene's did the same thing. I remember the first time I talked with Gene, that was probably the second or third time. Now, the thing to know about Gene Simmons is that he had a fanzine as a kid. He did magazine. He did a science fiction, fantasy, and horror magazine. So that was actually how he and I met, which is how I came to do a deal to do the official magazine for the rock band Kiss. And he was like throwing literary allusions at me, and I just kept naming them off.
Yep.
And he, after about a half hour, he's like, okay, I hate to admit this. I'm like, what? He's like, the first time in my life I feel like I'm talking to somebody who's better read than I am. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've only edited a magazine. I own 9 national science fiction magazines. Yep. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sláinte.
Definitely go out and find this.
Yeah, look up Mollydooker, look up the Boxer, and tune in next time.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.